I am familiar with the changes that are proposed by Mr. Wilson, and as an executive over the last 8 years, it's always great to seek new and improved methods of providing service to the citizens of our county. I think it's very important for us to periodically take an objective assessment of where we are with our programs, with our policies. We also understand that it takes a tough leader, a committed leader, to be able to open his or her mind to changes, changes for the better, mind you. And I certainly look forward to working with Mr. Wilson as we move forward and taking an objective assessment of those proposed changes for our facility here in the county.
I am aware of his announcement. I think, we have a new great facility there on Brown Station Road, and I am committed to many of the outcomes that he is seeking through the policy, and finding healthy homes and healthy outcomes for all animals. He's pointed out something in his statement that only about 15 or 20% of animals are actually acquired through shelters. And I certainly want to work constructively with all of the pet lovers, all of the organizations in the community to see how we constructively increase that number. I think more people ought to see shelters as an option for where they acquire their animals. So I certainly will be working to increase that number because I do want to see more animals in Prince George's County have a positive outcome if they have to end up in shelters. So I think we've got to work both on the front end of trying to address some of those issues that result in animals ending up in shelters, but I also think we've got to look to see how we increase the number of adoptions, from shelters. So I'll be looking at policies and recruitment efforts and community efforts focused around both those, the front end and the back end.
Yes, I'm vaguely familiar with his announcement and his philosophy. And I'd have to say I have to agree with that philosophy. A life is important, whether it's a human life or whether it's an animal life. To take a life indiscriminately for no reason serves no one any purpose. And in this particular case, his philosophy of wanting to bring in animals and then turning them right back around and making sure that they have a home, adoption for them, I think is the exact same thing we want to do for our homeless children, our adopted children. So I see him almost modeling what he wants to do with animals after what we should be doing for our children here that don't have a family. You take care of those who have not had the best family upbringing, who have not had the best of living conditions, because you never know what that individual or what that animal's life will be like in a year, 5 years from now, and how they may impact someone. So that animal that he decides to save, that he decides to adopt, may very well be the animal that's a companion for someone else that doesn't have any children, that has a medical condition that they're utilizing that animal for. So you never give up on an animal, just like you don't ever give up on a human being.
Since Mr. Wilson has a particularly unique vision for animal services, would you be willing to appoint him to a policy-making management position in order to continue the implementation of policies based on the new life-saving principles? And would you support changes in lower-level personnel if necessary?
Certainly, I want to look at all the positions in Prince George's County government and make sure we have the best people in those positions. But what I do like is the fact that the new regulations and the new order that Mr. Wilson said at the opening of the shelter. But I want to make sure that the philosophy of the men and women who are going to carry out the policy right there at the shelter and carry out the policy of working with making sure that Prince George's County is not only one of the safest places for animal rights, but also make sure we embrace the philosophy of how we make sure that we're not killing animals at the rate that we are now. So to me, the most important thing is to get the right people in there, but also to make sure that staff, the frontline people, are absolutely the correct people who should be running, our shelters. There are too many complaints that I hear as a candidate, but more importantly, when I was a delegate in the House in Maryland. So I want to make sure we get the right individuals that are working there, and that's what I'll make sure as county executive we do.
Well, as an executive, I do understand that oftentimes you need to make changes at the top. But most importantly, I know that you don't oftentimes make changes just for the sake of change. Innovative, progressive moves in the right direction to provide services to our community is very important. The concept proposed by Mr. Wilson is it's innovative, and it's a policy that I think our county is a long time coming to bring to Prince George's County, something that we need to look at. Having stakeholders as a part of a board to look at this policy. Mr. Wilson is the one who's brought this information to me, so I understand where he stands with this policy. So I am certainly looking forward to working with him as we move forward, and in particular, the facility that we have. The intentions were to make this a model facility for not only this region but across this country. So it's very important for me to have the proper staff who are committed to moving forward as we continue to grow as a county. And if that means changes in personnel, then that's what it means. I've had 8 years of experience in understanding that as you make change, oftentimes there are those who aren't committed to making that same change. But what's most important is that we make the change that's better for our community.
I would generally, I've said this about all of the appointments in the administration. I don't think you can look at it in a vacuum. I think it's important to appoint people who support the goals of the statement and the policy that he has laid out and enunciated. I support those goals and that statement. So I think whoever I were to appoint in that position would also share those goals and would be someone I would consult with those in the animal-loving community to determine that that person also shares their goals. So I think the goal is to have the policy drive the appointment. But overall, with all of the appointments in the administration, I don't think we should look at them in a vacuum. I'll be looking for a number of qualities in the people that I would select for my administration.